For decades, Ed and Lorraine Warren documented paranormal cases that shook the world. But there was one they never revealed publicly until now. It all began on a journey to the heart of Mexico, where an ancient legend came to life before their eyes. Immerse yourself in the forbidden mystery of La Llorona, an investigation buried in the most secret archives of the Occult Museum. Why did the Warrens fear this case so much they chose to silence it? The answer will make you question everything you think you know about the beyond. Mexico, 1977. Under a blazing sun that painted the ancient ruins gold, Ed and Lorraine Warren descended a narrow dirt road toward a small village hidden in the mountains of Hidalgo. What started as simple curiosity, a letter written in Old Spanish from a forgotten parish warning of a curse awakened after nearly 2 centuries of silence, quickly became something else. The sender was Father Esteban Larios, a local priest who claimed the spirit of La Llorona had returned, terrorizing the entire community. Accustomed to unspeakable horrors, the Warrens expected nothing out of the ordinary. But the moment they crossed the border, Lorraine felt pressure in her chest. Something ancient was watching her. Upon arriving in the village, they were met with wary glances, closed doors, and a constant whisper, "Don't go near the river at night." The river, a dark and silent arm of the Tula River, was known locally as the River of Souls. They said a woman had drowned there in colonial times after losing her children under mysterious circumstances. Since then, her cry was heard on moonless nights. But this time was different. A 5-year-old girl had disappeared the week before, and her mother claimed she saw a white silhouette carrying her into the water. Ed, naturally skeptical, decided to investigate the riverbed during the day. What he found wasn't just a local legend. Trees marked with ancient symbols, broken crosses stabbed into the ground, and an improvised altar at the foot of a giant ceiba tree revealed that villagers had tried to contain something or someone. Lorraine had her first spiritual contact that same afternoon. When she touched a stone near the altar, she fell into a trance and whispered in Nahuatl words that would later be translated as the mother without a grave. That night, the Warrens began to understand they weren't dealing with a simple apparition. The entity in that place had roots deeper than Catholicism, deeper than time. Father Esteban took them to the parish archives, where they discovered a document sealed by the Holy Office in the 17th century. It mentioned excommunication from eternal witchcraft and a water pact. Lorraine, disturbed, wrote in her diary, "This is not a ghost story. It's a centuries-old warning, and we arrived too late." The first night in the village brought more than silence and superstition. The Warrens stayed in a humble room in the rectory, where the air smelled of ancient dampness and burnt incense. At midnight, a scream tore through the sky like an open wound. It wasn't human, a long, heartbreaking wail that seemed to rise from deep within the earth. Ed jumped up immediately while Lorraine, already awake, whispered while staring out the window, "She's near. She doesn't want us here." They dressed quickly and headed toward the river. Father Esteban was waiting, trembling, clutching a rosary of dark beads. The river shimmered under the faint moonlight. There, within the thick mist, they saw a female figure floating just above the water, dressed in white, her long hair covering her face. Her cry was hypnotic, a blend of sorrow and rage that pierced the soul. Ed tried to approach, but a cold gust of wind pushed him back. Lorraine fell to her knees. An inaudible whisper entered her mind. It was as if someone or something was speaking to her in a forgotten language. Suddenly, she looked up and screamed, "They're not dead." She's still searching. The voice wasn't hers. Father Esteban tried to recite a psalm, but the words caught in his throat. The figure vanished into the fog, and the river returned to its sinister calm. Back at the rectory, Lorraine wrote furiously in her notebook. She drew eyes, hundreds of weeping eyes floating in the dark, children standing by the water, holding hands with a faceless woman. Ed, concerned, urged her to rest, but she refused. "If I sleep, I'll see her again." The next morning, a devastated family arrived at the church. Their daughter Camila, 8 years old, had vanished at dawn. The mother swore she'd seen her walking like a sleepwalker toward the river, humming a song she didn't recognize. In the girls' room, Ed found a withered flower on the pillow, the same species growing near the pagan altar. When Lorraine touched it, she saw a brief vision. Camila trapped in a whirlpool, screaming silently while a shadow held her underwater. Tension grew in the village. The bells didn't ring, doors stayed shut, and animals refused to approach the river. Lorraine insisted the entity wasn't a regular ghost. It was a conscious echo, an emotional remnant so powerful it had transcended its original form. That afternoon, while digging through forgotten documents in the sacristy, they found an ancient drawing of a woman crying by a river with children at her feet. On the back, a handwritten phrase, "Those who hear her cry are marked." Ed set up a recorder near the river altar to capture the night sounds. In the morning, they listened to the tape. At first, only wind, then the same wailing. But also something else, a raspy male voice whispering, "She will come for you too." The Warrens knew this wasn't just another demon from Europe. It was something born of pain across generations, and their time was running out. Lorraine locked herself in her room for hours. Amid murmurs and trembling, she wrote compulsively in her personal diary, as if an invisible force guided her hand. Ed, worried, tried to intervene, but each time, she spoke names they had never heard. Silanin, Koyal, Saki, Tonanzin, maternal and death goddesses from ancient Aztec cosmology. Lorraine had no knowledge of pre-Hispanic mythology. This was no coincidence. In her writings, she described a recurring dream, walking through a dark canal, surrounded by faceless children reaching out to her. At the end, a woman with long black hair, soaked dress, and bleeding eyes waited. She wore the same locket found among the cursed parish objects. The connection was undeniable. Ed contacted a local historian, Don Alfonso Ortega, who revealed a hidden legend. La Llorona was not a single entity, but a spiritual echo of countless maternal tragedies during the colonization. Indigenous women who, after losing their children in massacres or rituals, offered their souls to ancient deities in exchange for revenge. Over centuries, those souls fused into a presence that could not be destroyed. The most disturbing discovery was a letter hidden in an old missal signed by a 19th century nun. She spoke of a girl possessed by the cries of many mothers, and how attempts to save her failed because the entity had learned to fake remorse. The nun begged for the place to be sealed, and that the river's water never be used for baptisms. That night, Lorraine dreamed again, this time of a deserted village. All the doors were open. Inside each home, the same vision, mothers with hollow eyes rocking broken dolls as if they were real babies. A voice in the wind whispered, "We don't cry from sorrow. We cry to call." She woke to find her diary open to a page she didn't remember writing. A childlike drawing showed a screaming woman's face, with a phrase in Old Spanish beneath, "The weeping is the key." The next day, a girl named Mariana handed the Warrens a broken cross she found under her bed. She said she couldn't sleep because a wet lady sang to her at night. Lorraine felt a wave of energy so negative from the cross that she nearly fainted. Ed examined it and found knife marks forming circles around a name, Catalina de Aguirre. In the parish records, they discovered Catalina had been accused of witchcraft in 1781, after losing her 3 children to a river epidemic. She refused to bury them, insisting they were alive underwater. She was executed for heresy, and her grave was never consecrated. That night, Ed and Lorraine conducted a controlled invocation session using the broken cross. The experiment, recorded on real tape, was terrifying. The temperature dropped 15 degrees, candles blew out on their own, and Lorraine, entranced, began speaking with a distorted voice, repeating Catalina again and again. Then she switched to Nahuatl, Lalapa Mitlalatli Nisiwa Pillai, which translates to "Here lies the arrow of the heart. I am the princess." Suddenly, the cross broke in half with a sharp crack, and an invisible force hurled Ed against the stone wall. There was no doubt this wasn't a wandering spirit. It was a fragment of a soul that had made a pact to exist outside the natural cycle. On the recording, underneath Lorraine's voice, they heard the laughter of children. Father Esteban confessed that other priests had tried to seal the curse with exorcisms. One drowned in the baptistry. Another lost his mind and vanished in the mountains. Only one option remained: find Catalina's body and perform an ancestral liberation ritual. But no one knew where she was buried. Lorraine, guided by her sensitivity, had a vision after touching an ancient stone behind the altar. She saw a dry field, an ivy-covered inverted cross, and a doll buried under volcanic rocks. Catalina didn't want rest. She wanted company in her eternal grief. And she was choosing new children. At 3 a.m., the silent church bells rang, not by human hand. Father Esteban swore he hadn't touched them. For the Warrens, it was the final sign. Something was manifesting with growing power. Camila's disappearance had triggered it. The entity, known simply as she among the villagers, fed on grief, on the collective fear of mothers who no longer knew whether to pray or run. Lorraine, after reviewing her visions and the diary that seemed to write itself, concluded they couldn't wait for reinforcements. They had to try an exorcism, not a traditional one, but a hybrid ritual combining Catholic prayers with ancestral symbols she had seen in visions. Father Esteban, hesitant but desperate, agreed. The Vatican would never approve of what they were about to do, but the terror in his people's eyes was stronger than any church bureaucracy. They chose a ruined chapel near the river, once used to bury the unbaptized. Under a collapsing dome and a moss-covered altar, they placed the items: Mariana's broken cross, the cursed locket, a black candle that only lit in the presence of spiritual energy, and a vial of river water. Lorraine began reciting Psalm 91, but her voice changed. It was a woman's voice, sobbing, fractured sharp. "Forgive me. I didn't know. My children still cry beneath the water." Father Esteban tried to continue in Latin, but the candles flared violently. The temperature plummeted, the wind spiraled inside the chapel, and the ground trembled. A translucent figure appeared, floating in dust and shadow. Her face was veiled in blood. Her cry wasn't just sound, it was vibration in the bones. Lorraine, trembling, took the invisible hand and said, "If you want your children, let them go. Their time has passed. The pain must end." The figure extended her hand, and a freezing gust filled the chapel. Laughter and sobbing merged. The river water churned, then went still and clear. The shadow slowly vanished. The weeping ceased. At dawn, Camila returned to the village, soaked, unharmed, and with no memory. Only a feeling that someone had cared for her. The Warrens left without a word, sealing the case with utmost confidentiality. In the occult museum, beside Annabelle and other cursed items, there's a sealed urn with an inscription: Mexico, 1977, never opened. They say that on certain nights, you can hear a faint whisper in the shadows, a drowned cry that never ends. Because there are names you should never say more than once, and pacts that, once broken, can never be sealed again. Are you ready to hear the cry? If this story reached you, it's because someone wanted you to know the truth. Maybe you've already heard her crying in your dreams, or perhaps you will tonight. Subscribe if you dare to uncover more hidden cases from the world of the Warrens. Comment if you've ever felt an unexplainable presence, because in the darkness, we're not as alone as we think. And be careful when you turn off the light tonight, because she's still searching for her children, and she might mistake you for one of them. Until next time, if you wake up,